Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at this Craftsman Z530. Customer brought it in and said that the blades sound rough when they engage. I'm going to go over the full diagnostics and repair to get this taken care of, whether your blades will not engage, whether it sounds rough, whether it cuts uneven, or anything else to do with the deck on this zero-turn mower. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons as we go along if you enjoy the content. When the blades won't engage, the first thing I encourage people to do is check out your belt. Make sure it's intact and make sure everything spins freely. You should be able to grab the belt and spin everything. You will get some resistance from the clutch, but everything should spin relatively easily. And it does. I don't really hear much in the way of something that would cause major issues like the deck not working here. The idler pulley bushing seems kind of strange that it'll go up and down like that. And then the deck wheels are actually missing, the anti-scalp wheels on both sides, over there and over here. But I don't see anything off the top that would make this deck not engage. That's not the problem we have here, but check that out first. If it will not move or you're locking up a lot when you're trying to move this belt, as you're trying to spin everything, you can spin a pulley also. But if anything's locking up, we'll want to remove this belt and check out the spindles and the idler pulleys. I will show you how to do that momentarily. Let's see exactly how these blades sound when we engage them. The deck is vibrating pretty bad. We can see the idler arm jumping up and down a lot. That can be caused by a bad belt. It can be caused by bad bearings in one of the idler pulleys or in one of the spindles or a bent blade. We're going to remove the deck and figure out exactly why that is. If your blades are not engaging, see the end of the video where we test the clutch and the electrical to figure out exactly why that is. We did notice as the deck was running that there's a lot of play in this bolt here. This should be completely tight. That's not going to cause the vibration, but it can kind of make it louder than what it really is. First, we're going to take the belt off. We're just going to grab one side and turn the pulley. It'll pop right off very easily. Now, if we spin our spindle, you can hear that a lot of noise out of it. We'll test the rest of them here in just a minute. Lower the deck down to make it easier. Make sure that the belt is off the pulley at the back. There's a cotter pin and pin on each side. I want to remove the cotter pin. Just kind of pull out on the bigger side. The whole pin comes out. And then you just slightly lift on the deck. And the pin holding the deck will come out also. Same thing on this side. Clip down and out. Lift the deck, pull the pin out. And the deck drops. Then we've got the same type thing on the front. Pull the pin out. Might have to keep the pin from rotating when you do that. This one is a little bit shorter, but the deck is completely free now. Put the deck adjusting arm back up to get it out of the way. Makes it a little bit easier to pull the deck out. The deck will just slide right out. You don't have to actually remove the deck to check the spindles and the idler pulleys. It just makes it a little bit more accessible. We kind of spun that one earlier. all that noise you're getting, and you see the whole deck's kind of actually moving as that is. It's vibrating the whole deck. That could be where all the vibration's coming from. Could have a bent blade down below. We'll check that in a second. I like to hold just the belt out of the way and spin the idler pulleys. Get a little bit of noise, but not a whole lot on that. Check the left side. Oh yeah, it's got a bunch of bearing noise. I'm trying to hold this belt out of the way. Hard to hold them out of the way, but it does have quite a bit of bearing noise in this one. Let's check our other spindle. Making quite a bit of noise. And we can grab the pulley and move it back and forth. Hear that clicking? That means that there's play in that bearing. For the idler arm, that is a massive amount of play. Should not move back and forth. There's one stud and a bushing that comes there, and it's just all wallered out, you can tell. And it shouldn't move up and down that far. This is in really bad shape. That could be where some of that is coming from. And then also there's quite a few decent sized chunks out of the belt. This deck is just in really bad shape, but any one of these things alone could cause vibration. It could cause noise. But all of these together, that's why we're getting those horrible noises coming out of it whenever that deck is running. Let's check the blades. When we're looking at the blades, everything should spin freely if it's not touching. Getting some pretty good noise, and you shouldn't be able to actually move the blade up and down. You hear all of that vibration or all of that play, and that's from the bearing or the actual housing of that spindle itself. Same thing over here, except that one's a lot worse. And it's not because of a loose nut that holds it on, it's just that much play in that bearing. You shouldn't be able to move that up and down at all. If you're wondering if the vibration's coming from a bent blade, you can pick a spot out on the deck, you can mark it where your blade's supposed to be. Look how far off that is. This one is way down here. That is a long ways off from one side to the other. That means that that blade is bent. Easy way to check it. But just that little bit there can cause all that vibration. Almost any of these things could cause this vibration, but with everything together, that's why it's vibrating so bad. Just clean this up. Basically what we need to do to get this taken care of is completely rebuild this deck. We need new spindles, new blades, new idler pulleys, a new idler arm, new idler bushing, and a new belt. That's what's going to take care of the vibration on it. If you just have a simple issue with a bent blade or something, you can start there. If you're getting a bunch of noise out of the deck, or if there's just play in the idler arm, all of the bearings essentially are bad. Most shops anymore aren't going to rebuild spindles very often if the spindle replacements are cheap. And the reason is labor. Labor to replace the bearings is going to be almost the same cost as just replacing the spindle as an assembly. In this case, I believe the housing itself is actually worn out, especially in this one. It's what it looks like to me anyway, so I'm not going to attempt it. I'm going to replace the entire thing. Just need a 15/16 to take the nut off. Blade comes straight off. You can see just how worn out that is all around where it sits. It's in horrible shape. And then we're going to take a 3/8 and we're going to take the 4 bolts out to hold the spindle on. If you're trying to save the spindle, I like to tighten first and then loosen. Seems that the bolts come out better that way. It kind of cleans the threads instead of snapping them off. Works pretty well most of the time if you're trying to save them. Not that we're trying to here, but the spindle is completely free. Sometimes this mounting area can be all bent up and stuff to where we may have to do some adjustments. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a few. Not going to show you how to do that, I don't think. I don't think anything's actually bent up here, but it is a possibility. We've got our new spindle assembly in good shape. Some of them don't come pre-threaded. So if you get one that's not, you'll have to use a tapered bolt, which is what the ones that come with it are. They're a little bit smaller, and you'll actually have to just straighten it out and kind of impact it down in there to cut those threads yourself. Most of them anymore come pre-threaded, but occasionally you'll get one that doesn't, especially if you're using aftermarket. Come with a little bit different bolts. They're just regular 1/2-inch head. We'll take this one out, get it out of the way. Put the other one in, and we're going to want the greaser to go towards the outside. Makes it easiest to grease. I'm going to use some anti-seize on all of these bolts to make sure that they do not seize up and break off anytime anyone needs to service them. Use anti-seize on pretty much everything. Take that cap off now that we're here. When it comes to blades, these are the originals and this is the replacement. They are made by MTD. These are the new style of this. You can't buy this style anymore, but they are the same length and everything. It goes on here. Perfect. And then what we want, I usually like to use they're not going to come with a bottom nut. I usually like to use the one off of the other spindle from the top. Seems like they're normally in a little better shape than the bottom ones. Not as rusted out and stuff. So you can always throw some anti-seize there on that shaft. Make a huge mess. Lay it on. Now let's see the difference in this one versus the other one. No noise. Quiet. And if we look at the outside edge, from there to there, it is exactly the same as we spin them around, knowing that this blade's good, as if we already don't. Replace the next spindle. Blade off. Let's try these last three without spinning them in first. Guess maybe they'll come out anyway. Just wanted to see if any of them were going to break off. Seems more common than not. other spindle. Get some anti-seize on these bolts. Not worried about where the belt or anything is currently. We'll get all that lined up and back on later. I do not like how some of these have bolts that are this long, really. The longer they are, the more it goes through on the back side, and the more possibility for them to get locked up. You obviously don't want them seized up if you're trying to remove them. The ones in those other spindles are quite a bit shorter, and that's really all you need. You don't need 1.25 inches of threads. Good, take our protective cap off. Again, I'm just going to take this one off the top. You can use new nuts if you want to. Got some laying around, or if you want to order some. Telling you, this stuff just gets everywhere. Only thing I don't like about it, let's spin these blades around, and you want to make sure that those tips are 100% across, 100% even. They're just perfect. If they're not, you may have to do a little bit of what I'd call percussive maintenance to the deck. Essentially either bending the metal back or washing it to make sure that the deck is level all the way across. I'll put a link to that in the description that covers how to do that if yours are not even at this point. Spindles and blades, everything here is good. Let's get the idler pulleys, the brake arm bushing, and the belt replaced next. I wanted to get just a little bit closer view of what you should be looking for. Tip to tip. It should not be one above the other at all. It should be exactly level, no matter which way you spin the blade. I guess I'll throw the deck wheels on real quick. These are just completely missing. There is a keeper on the backside that you don't need. Get all that out of the way. And you can throw just a little bit of grease on this. Just a thin layer, keep it nice and lubed. Put it back in. We're going to go in the same hole we were before. There's 4 different options for how high you want it. Looks like at some point it was here anyway. I'm going to use a 3/4 on the outside and a 9/16 on the inside. Tighten it on down. We're good. Same thing with this one. Little keeper off. All of that junk off. Try not to drop them. All right. And through. You don't want a bunch of grease buildup on the outside because it can attract some grass and actually make it wear quicker. You just want a nice, small amount. When we put these on here, if they're not in line and straight up and down, if you're looking at each other, you may need to bend this bracket or contort it in one way or another. That way the deck wheels actually sit level. These are fine, but the welds start to crack and it'll be down or up if things were hit. These look really good though. To get started on the idler arm, I usually like to take the spring off and then get it out of the way. It just sits in that hole. And then we can take the idler pulley off, the whole assembly. You've got to hold the bolt on the back side though while you do it. And it is a 9/16 for both locations, both the nut and the bolt head on the back side. We're going to save the nut and the, what do you call it? It's basically a slinger. It's to sling water off instead of letting it into the bearing. Take our belt and everything down. See how worn that actually is. Same thing here, it's completely worn out, real bad. Now that we've got it off, we can put our new spacer back on. So the spacer and the new arm goes on just like such. We'll put just a hair, just a tiny bit of grease in there. Again, you don't need a ton, just enough to lubricate it. Good. And we can put all this back together right now without having to worry about anything. We can put the put this other idler on afterwards. It's easy enough. It's just a bolt that goes through. Got our new idler pulley right here. And we've got to get the new belt started. So I've got it. We do use OEM belts on these. No reason not to. I thought maybe I could get a little better angle and lighting. When I was taking a look at this, as we have the bolt in the bottom just to kind of line everything up, this was actually basically almost hitting the keeper. And the belt, if I put it in between there, it was going to rub against the belt. So I bent that slightly outwards. You do not want that belt rubbing on the keeper. Seems like these were manufactured a little bit too close. So be wary of that if you get one that is the case on. We do have our washer right underneath that the bolt goes through. I'm going to clean that up just a little bit more. Just some old grease on there. Wipe the back side of this off, and then I'll grease that up just a hair again. Just a little more grease. Get this washer. And you can get to it through the bottom pretty easily. As long as you have it kind of hanging off in one direction or the other. Make sure that that bushing stays in that idler arm. We're going to install the pulley, and we're also going to have to install the belt at the same time, the new one. Or whichever one you're using anyway. And that belt will have to go. Basically it goes around the pulley, and then it's going to come this way, the flat side against the pulley. Put our two back on top. I like to just hold everything to the side, and that keeps it in place. Also keeps that bolt from falling out without holding it at the bottom. Just going to use a long ratchet. Tighten it down. Once that's on, you should be able to freely move this without issue, and the idler should spin. If it's not, you know that we missed either the bushing where that idler arm is trapped in there, or something else is wrong. Maybe there's maybe this is installed wrong or whatever, but this should spin good. You shouldn't have play back and forth at all. And again, that belt, if you pull it against the pulley, it should not be touching that keeper behind it. If it is, you will have to address that. So as we look here and we hold it against the pulley, it's just barely, even after me bending it, I've got maybe a 1/16 of an inch in between the belt and the keeper, which is fine because it's always going to be tight, but again, definitely don't want it rubbing. Gotta take our other pulley off because we're going to use the hardware that came with it for the new one. Just got a nut at the back. We're going to use that bushing. And then there's a washer and that slinger and bolt at the top. So we'll put that on our new pulley, just like such, and the bushing on the back side. It'll go through that hole. And on this one, we also have to install the belt. It's real easy on this style. We'll be straight across the back. And then this one, the flat side comes towards the pulley again. Get our nut. These are also 9/16. That should be plenty close to the pulley, but again, not rubbing. If you see any issues there, and then this should spin freely. It does, besides the belt hitting it. Now I kind of put this halfway up there, but if you go from the underside and then the other side of the spring hooks into here. Wanted to go over the spring and belt routing one more time before we put this deck back on. Slide this back under. Get everything mostly lined back up. It's almost there, and then we'll drop the deck height adjuster again. Gotta lift it again because this is actually your height adjuster and it'll sit up against this bolt going through. I'll show you how to adjust that in just a minute. This is one of the two longer ones. Two longer, and then the one shorter is going to be for the front. Put our clip right back on. There we go. Same thing goes for this side. Line everything up. Put it through, one pin. Same thing at the front. Hook just goes down. To get the belt back on, there's a few different ways you can do it. You can put it on at the clutch and back now with everything on, or you can pull it off one of the spindles and you can install it on the clutch first and then come back to the side and install it last here. I think this method is probably easier for most of you, so I'm going to show you how to do it this way. Now that we have everything else on, we'll go above the cross member with the belt, and we'll put it around the pulley and back. Your clutch pulley, it's on. Since we have the belt around all the other pulleys, all you have to do is grab here, and you can take almost all of the slack out of the belt, and we can go around this pulley. Wrap it around. It makes it really easy to do from the side that way. Everything should still be free like it was originally. Again, you'll still have that resistance from the clutch, but everything else should spin smoothly. I went ahead and greased the spindles while I'm right here. Next, we'll level the deck up. Before you do that, air up the tires and make sure that they're at 100%, because if they're not at the right level and one's real low, you could be leveling the deck for no reason. And then once you sit on it, the weight will go to that lower side anyway. I've actually got 12 in the rears, 10 supposed to be max, and then drain some. Good. Max in the front is 22. Honestly, feel like I've got almost 0 in the front. Guess I had some. I like to be right at that max pressure. Good to go. To level your deck is actually pretty easy. If you look directly underneath it on a flat surface, you should be able to tell which side's lower and which side's higher. Here we can see just by the deck wheel that this side's a lot higher, but if you look across, it is not just because the wheel is bent. That's very well possible if you're just looking at the wheels. This one, that wheel is all the way almost against the ground, and this one's probably a ½ inch off. And it's the same thing for the outside of the deck. This is what you're going to be looking for, is from the bottom of the deck down. What really matters is blade height down, absolutely. But the problem with that is most of you don't have one of these nice fancy tools to stick in and measure blade height. That's how you would do it if you did. You'd swing it around until it's at the outside edge, and you would use your blade height checker to see exactly what your blade height is. So right here, I've got basically just over 2 inches is at the bottom of the triangle on the left-hand side at the outside edge. We're going to adjust it according to the outside edge, and we're going to see what the other one actually comes up as. I'm going to measure here, and this one's way higher. So this is about 1.5 inches. We'll see what that other side actually measures, and we're going to be, again, at the very outside edge. This side, as we're looking, I'd say we're right about 1.25 inches. So we need to come up probably 1/4 inch on this side. To do that, we're going to loosen the ½ inch nut that holds this bolt in place. And we're going to turn this in to raise the deck. It's going to raise it right up. And you're basically just pushing harder on this middle piece, on the pin that we put in, and that's raising the whole deck up. If you wanted to lower it, you would go counterclockwise, and that would lower the deck. And you can do that and keep checking and figure out exactly what kind of height you are. We're almost there, need just a hair more. Until you get it to 1.5 like the other side was. It still needs a little more. You can kind of lift up on the deck and actually do it with your hand too if you'd like. Once you get that level, make sure that we're good. Right at 1.5 inches. What we'll do is we'll tighten this down. And that locks it in place. That locks that bolt in place so the height stays there. Now as we look across the deck, you can see the deck wheels are pretty well exactly the same height. We're still at right at 1.5 inches on this side to the bottom of the deck. Or if you're testing with your trusty tool, to the outside. Or just above that triangle. It's just above the bottom of the triangle. Let's check the other side, make sure it's good. Dead on 1.5 inches for the deck. And let's test. I'm going to bring that blade around. Okay. See what it says at that outside tip. We're going. We're right up against it. Exactly where that other one is. Just away from the tip of the triangle. Now we want to measure the front of the deck and the rear of the deck. The front should be just a hair lower than the rear. We're at right about almost 1.5 inches, just under 1.5 inches in the front. And the back right at the middle is where we want to measure. And to the bottom of the deck, I'm just under 1.5 inches too. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lower that. I'm going to lower the front of that deck just a little bit. To lower the deck, we've got to screw in this back nut. There is a front nut that keeps it in place once you get it to the right spot. We got a 3/4 on the front and a 7/8 on the back. Oh yeah, those aren't even tight. So that's probably why it's dropped down. I'm gonna screw this one in. Yeah, it's nowhere even. Huh. Yeah, something's happened here. Something has severely happened because these adjusters, that back adjuster is not even working. We're supposed to be able to just tighten down the back one. And that would raise it, or you can loosen it to lower it. So we've got an extra nut apparently. I would assume it's supposed to be just two 3/4 inch nuts. But for some reason we have an additional one. So we're gonna go down just a hair. We want it to be about a 1/16 lower. It doesn't have to be a whole lot lower, but if it's not, you'll end up actually cutting the grass twice. So I'm right at a 1/16 under a 1/2 inch. Make sure that that is good. Or 1.5 inches, I mean. Yeah. We're almost 1/8 lower in the front now at the lowest setting. At the highest setting, that's probably going to put it right at 3/8 of an inch because the back and the front don't lift at the same rate. But that is going to be good. So we'll tighten this back down. I'm not sure why that other nut was there. Surely that's not how it's supposed to be. I wonder if it's because the threads are bad on this. That's what it seems like. So they couldn't get good tightness against it to keep it into place. It's kind of what it's seeming like. I'm going to grab a different nut and see if I can get that to thread on better. Got one I just had laying around. Well, thought it was the same thread. There it is. Look how easy that thread's on. Grab my second 3/4 and I'm going to tighten that up so we tighten them together. So you hold the back one and tighten the front one to it. That locks that deck where it should be. No need for the 7/8 nut as a spacer. And let's tighten this up the rest of the way if we can. All right, nice and secure. Let's see how it does. Not the easiest repair in the world. Any one of these things singly could have caused a bunch of noise with the deck. If you got bad bearings in the spindles, if you got a bad idler pulley, if you've got a bad deck belt with a big chunk missing out of it. The idler arm, if it's real loose or you have play back and forth, it can cause those loud noises. And then your blades, if they're bent, it's going to vibrate real bad. We had kind of a conglomerate of all of it going on. It was vibrating real bad. It was making a bunch of loud noises. And if anything's loose on the deck or on the mower where the hangers go, this one was real loose, and that just kind of exacerbates the noise even worse. If you need to figure out why the blades aren't engaging, stay tuned. I'm going to go over the electrical right away coming up. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons if you enjoyed the content. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day. The electrical system on this for the PTO clutch is pretty simple. The PTO clutch sits directly under the engine, and that's what actually spins to turn the belt, to turn all the blades. This switch here for the PTO, as long as the key is in the on position, so one click to the right, it doesn't have to be running and you don't have to be sitting on it. The arms do not have to be out or anything, but if you pull this PTO button, you should hear that PTO clutch engage. It'll be a loud click. That tells you that that PTO clutch is getting power from the PTO switch and it is working properly in this case. If it's not working, you have one of three issues. Either the PTO switch is bad, the PTO clutch itself is bad, or there's bad wiring going to the PTO clutch or to the switch. I'm going to show you how to test the PTO switch coming right up. We'll show you what to look for on the wiring also. First, check all the connections at your battery. The wires should be good. You shouldn't be able to move these at all. If you can, that connection's not tight enough. You want to redo it. If there's any corrosion, you'll want to replace those bolts and clean everything up. You'll also check where the black wire comes back to the ground. It's your ground wire. That's completely tight and free of corrosion. Same thing with the post on the solenoid. You want this ground, because that's the main ground that connects back to here with this green wire that grounds the whole system. That green wire goes back through all of the electronics on this machine. Make sure that is all completely good. We can come directly under the engine if you have a voltmeter, and we can test the voltage actually getting to the PTO clutch. This whole assembly, the pulley and this piece up top, is your PTO clutch. You can remove the connector, just use a flat screwdriver. You kind of twist up, and then that comes right out. So that connector is free. And to test voltage, you're just going to put one lead into each and test volts DC with that ignition on and that PTO switch pulled and see what you get. You should get whatever the battery voltage is. I have my wires in here. I have 12.61 volts at the wiring going to the clutch. If your clutch was not working and you weren't hearing that click, but you get that voltage down to the clutch is in fact bad. There is no adjustment on this clutch. Some of them have springs and nuts that you can tighten down if the gap's too far. This one does not. To test the PTO switch, we'll have to get it out. There are 4 5/16 head plastic screws. It all just screws right into plastic. They're all the same size, and then this whole panel comes right off. We now have the PTO switch, which we can unplug. You don't have to take it out, but I'm going to take it out so it's a little bit easier to show you. If these are all corroded or bad in any way, if you see any burn marks or anything, you want to address that. These look pretty good. I'm just going to pull these tabs just to the back side, and then we'll pop it through. It's kind of tight on this one. Just pushing tabs. There's 2 on each side, and then the whole switch just comes straight out. Switch is out. Now we can test it. If you'll notice, one side says normally closed, NC, which means from the common, which is going to be on the other side, it says COM, which is common. From the common side to the normally closed side, before the switch is pulled, that's going to have a direct connection. We can take our meter, and we can either go to the setting that has a dot and 3 lines, and that's a continuity check. If we do that and then hit select, when we touch them together, it'll beep. You can also use the horseshoe symbol, and that's going to show exactly what ohms you're getting. You want basically 0.0 ohms if you're using the ohm setting, and if you're using the continuity setting, it should beep. We're going to use continuity for ease here. So I'm on my common side, which is here, and my normally closed side, which is here, and I'm getting continuity. This next one does not have a normally closed circuit on this tab on the outside. It's all pairs. So we'll jump to the third one, and that does. So it's normally closed before the switch is pulled, and then once the switch is pulled, it's going to be open, which is going to be no connection. And then the other ones are going to be normally open, meaning when the switch is pulled like it is, you're going to get a connection from here, the common, to the normally open. Since I have the switch pulled, we're getting a connection now from there to there. And then when I push it, when it's off, I won't have a connection from here to here, since those are the normally open ones. This PTO switch is good, but if any one of these legs is showing a bad connection, then you will want to replace that PTO switch. It is bad. To test the ignition switch, what we'll do is we'll go to volts DC, and we're going to test with the ignition switch off. We want 12 volts on this red with a white stripe wire, or whatever the battery voltage is. So we're good there. We have 12.50 volts. Nothing else should have voltage on it at all now. If we turn the ignition switch to the on position, we should have voltage on both of the white wires. So we've got 12.45, and yep, there we go. 12.42, whatever the battery voltage is, that's what it should say at both of these white wires. So where the 2 white wires come in, and then when the side one comes in with the ignition switch on. When you go to start the mower on the orange wire, so when you're turning the key to start, it should have 12 volts there. Not getting a good connection. Hold it in there a little better. All right. So we've got 12.35 volts to there. I did remove one of the wires off the solenoid to make sure that it wouldn't try to start when I did that. Those are the only places you should have voltage though. The orange when you're trying to start, that's what feeds the solenoid voltage to start your mower. The white wires, the 2 here, when you're in the on position, and the single white out to this side when you're in the on position. The red should always have voltage. That comes from the battery and feeds the ignition switch. When we're in the on position, if we test either ohms resistance or continuity, we should have continuity back to ground or 0 ohms resistance or real close to it on the green wire. That should be there. And that should be there always, not just when you have it in the off position. You should always have continuity back to ground on your green wire. If you don't, that tells you that that connection, the 2 wires down there on the solenoid, aren't making a good connection, or the ground going back is not making a good connection where I showed you before. The other one that should have ground is going to be your yellow. When the switch is off, the yellow is what kills the engine, so it cuts the spark. As soon as you turn the ignition to on, that yellow wire should have nothing. As long as those values that I just showed you are exactly as I explained, this ignition switch is good. If you're missing anything, if you're not getting voltage on the yellow, or I'm sorry, on the whites with the blue, the double white, any of the whites with the ignition on, it's bad. If you're not getting voltage to the orange when we're turning it to start, it's bad. And if we're not getting ground back to the yellow with it being off and no ground with it being off, the ignition switch again would be bad. This one is good.